This happened to a friend of mine. She told me about it about a year or so ago. We'll call her Minji. Minji is in her late 20s and works as an English tutor in South Korea. One evening, a few years ago, she was tutoring a high school boy. They were up studying pretty late and the buses stopped running. Being a long way from his house, the boy asked if he could crash on her floor overnight and get the first bus in the morning. Minji was very reluctant because inviting a teenage male student to stay the night didn't sound like a great idea, but he was begging her and eventually she relented. They went back into her one-room apartment and she got into the bed while he laid a blanket out on the floor and they both fell asleep. A few hours later, at maybe 2 a.m., the boy wakes Minji up. "I'm really hungry," he says. "Let's go get some food." Minji opens her eyes and looks up at him in disbelief. "Food? Now?" "It's 2 a.m. Go back to bed." But the student insists. "No, I'm so hungry. Let's eat something now." She tells him that there's some ramen in the kitchen and he could fix himself some. This doesn't satisfy him. He doesn't want ramen. "There's a 24-hour place just down the road. Let's go there." Eventually, after several minutes of persuasion, the boy gets Minji to come with him to the restaurant. They leave the apartment and head out. As soon as they're on the street, the boy turns to Minji and says, "I'm not hungry. I woke up in the middle of the night and looked under your bed. There's a man sleeping there." They call the police and discover that a homeless man had been living in Minji's apartment, sleeping under the bed for 2 months. The boy only saw him because he was lying on the floor, so he had a clear view under the bed. I was driving a shortcut from 29 Palms, California to Albuquerque, New Mexico. 29 Palms is located in the desolate high desert east of LA. The shortcut was all 2-lane road through total nothingness, except for a passing through Amboy. Amboy is a nearly abandoned town nearly as far below sea level as Death Valley. So I was driving by myself in the afternoon and proceeded to drive up into the mountain range between Amboy and I-40. Once I reached the top, I'm driving north through a canyon with high grass on both sides of the road. Up ahead I see some stuff in the middle of the road. As I approach, I slow down to see a red Pontiac Fiero stopped sideways across both lanes. A suitcase open with clothes scattered everywhere and 2 bodies laying face down in the road, a man and a woman. I stop 100 feet or so away, and the hair on the back of my neck is standing up. Being a Marine, I reach under the seat and pull out a 9mm pistol and chamber a round. Something seemed very wrong. It looked too perfect, as if it were staged. An ambush? Something was just wrong. As I scanned the road, I saw a line I could drive. Past the guy in the road on his left, swerve to the right of the woman, behind the Fiero, and I'd be on the other side. I dropped it into first gear, punched it down, and drove the line I planned. I passed the back of the Fiero without hitting it, or either of the bodies in the road. I continued forward a couple of 100 feet and slowed down, so I could breathe and let my heart slow down. As I looked up into the rear view mirror, I saw that the 2 bodies had gotten up to their knees, and 20 or so people emerged from the tall grass on either side of the road by the car and bodies. At that moment, my right foot smashed the gas pedal to the floor, and did not let up until I had to slow down for the I-40 East on-ramp. I will never know what would have happened to me had I gotten out of the car to check on the bodies, or stopped my car closer to them. Some friends and I were doing some night fishing on the James River. We were sitting along the shoreline with a nice fire going, accompanied by the usual idle talk and a few beers, when suddenly, everyone just stopped talking, like a switch was flipped off. We were all staring across the river and felt as if something, or someone, was staring back. It was a very uneasy feeling, to which some of the group tried to shake off with typical macho humor, when a blood-curdling sound erupted from the other shore that froze everyone in their tracks. The sound was unlike any other that I had ever heard, and it made every hair on my body vibrate and tingle. The only way I could describe it is it sounded like a wild person with no language skills being gutted alive. No words, just this high-pitched, blood-curdling scream. Nobody moved or said a word. We all just sat there fixed in our stare, when just as suddenly, a second scream was let loose with even more force than the first. By this time, several of us were sprinting to our trucks that were parked a few yards away, retrieving various firearms. When we got back, we all sat there quietly, with our eyes fixed staring toward the opposite shore, watching the light from our fire reflecting off the rocks. We sat there waiting for another scream, or something to move on the other side of the river. Finally, a third scream came just as suddenly, but this time, it was on our side of the river, coming from the bushes about a yard away. We all hightailed out of there, leaving most of our stuff behind. When we got to our trucks, we heard the scream one more time, just beyond the tree line. We all floored it the hell away from there, and never found out what was making the sounds.